Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts. With me as always is the other patient host.
Brian, hi.
Hi. How are you?
I know what that one means.
What?
Patient, I know what that means.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
With the definition, if not always the experience.
Aww.
How are you today?
Fine. Yeah, I'm very relieved that we have a modicum of silence, as it is not a given. We have some reasonably new neighbors-ish. So kind of the building across from us, there's like a patio downstairs where they're like, it's attached to their apartment. And the people who live there really enjoy playing very loud music and having very loud parties, which is unusual for a time when people are stuck indoors at all times during a pandemic.
It's actually the perfect position to blast music to disturb the most amount of people.
Agreed.
It's pretty impressive.
And Lady Gaga Rain on Me while doing your gym
jazzercise
skipping jazzercise is like maybe the best way to make the most enemies in close quarters with people.
So if you're listening to this podcast, stop.
Fuck off.
Yeah, stop all your things, please.
Yeah.
So this week we are talking about episode 11 of season 5 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, entitled Triangle. You want to kick us off there with Buffy and summary? Sure.
So this was first aired on January the 9th, 2001. It was written by Jane Espenson, who last wrote The Replacement, and it was directed by Christopher Hibbler. Wow.
Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah, Christopher Hibbler. This is actually the first and only episode he's written, directed even. Okay. And it was directed by Christopher Hibbler. This is the first and only episode he directed. He died in 2010. No information about that except it was in Los Angeles. He directed like 4 episodes of Moonlighting, some Quantum Leap, but he directed 40 episodes of Matlock.
Wow.
Yeah, and he directed a lot of Beverly Hills 90210. But otherwise, very little information about him online.
There's a television program that I don't think anyone's ever actually watched except for hearing about reference on The Simpsons.
Yeah, so Matlock is it's your man, isn't it?
An elderly lawyer, I think.
Oh, is it?
You're thinking MacGyver.
You're
confused with MacGyver, yeah.
And you know why I'm confusing MacGyver? It's because Patty and Selma in The Simpsons love MacGyver, and the grandparents, so...
all of the retirement home folks love Matlock. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'll do a Buffy on summary as well. That's part of that.
That's the prompt, yeah.
Left in charge when Giles consults the Watchers, Anya bickers with Willow about magic experiments, alienating Tara and Xander, and accidentally releasing a troll. Once is Anya's boyfriend, whom she transformed. Not sure about that use of the word whom. He wrecks the bronze and pursues both women to the shop where he threatens to kill them. He is impressed by Xander's courage in fighting him and offers to spare one woman. Xander refuses to choose. Buffy fights the troll and Willow sends it away, leaving its hammer behind.
It's a really uncharacteristically comprehensive summary, I think.
I think someone else wrote that one. There was a bit of a bizarre Sophie's choice in that one. Sophie simply should have refused to choose. It would have been the morally better thing to do, according to Kant. But yeah, there you go.
Well, you can explain all about Kantian philosophy.
I think I've already done that.
Shortly.
I think I literally have done the trolley problem explanation before on this podcast.
If we had to endorse a philosopher as a podcast, which one would it be?
For me, it'd probably be... It's so hard because I want to say Hume, but he's like a racist.
Sure.
But he was in the 17th century. So 17th century racist, awful. But his philosophy is very good, in terms of he was a very early, he's one of my favorite philosophers.
Yeah, well, I can excuse racism for good philosophy.
That's
not true. Oh. That's not true.
No, I can't. I'm not saying that at all. Not even it was a different time. No excuse to be racist at any point in history. His philosophy is actually quite useful, though, in terms of a building blocks for skepticism.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I can see why you're a fan. What? Or can I? I'm not sure.
Anyway. Okay, so what we said we'd talk about for this episode in the part where we talk about shite is
our popular bronze banter segment.
The only part that people in my family actually listen to, and the rest of it they're just like, oh, whatever.
Well, like they they listen. Their downloads are as green as everybody else's. Yeah. So we you had a pick. I'm not sure where you got this from, but we inhaled
it's actually the AV Club's best TV shows of 2019. I was picking through the list again because I remember there was a couple of things that I didn't recognize at the time, and I was like, I'll come back to that. That's how we got to documentary now actually as well.
So we inhaled it this week. It's called The Other Two. It's a sitcom, I think it's fair to say. It's weird. It's almost like I was like, I want to call it a sitcom, but it's good, so I'm not sure if that's what it's called. And it's like 10 episodes long, and the premise is that there's 3 siblings, parented by Molly Shannon, who we love. What people know Molly Shannon from? I know her from things like Wet Hot American Summer, Eeyore, and a great episode.
Sorry, not Eeyore at all. Scrubs.
A great episode of Scrubs, I was about to say.
She was in that TV. So she was in that movie called like A Dog's Life or something like that. It was with her dog dying, I think. She's been in. You'd know her. She's been in everything. She's lovely. She's always a lovely mom and things.
Effervescent, I think.
She's effervescent.
So the premise basically being that there's 3 siblings, 2 of whom are like our age, so old, and one of whom is like Gen Z,
13 years old, yeah.
A 13-year-old, and then the premise is that he gets discovered as a
pop sensation.
I can't even think of a current equivalent.
Well, no, it's literally he's just supposed to be Justin Bieber.
Okay,
it's the over sexualization, the discovery on YouTube, the mother who's.
But that's old YouTube though. Like I feel like that.
Joel, even the people who are writing it are old.
That's true. Yeah.
So they're writing about Justin Bieber, even though it's like 10 years later.
Yeah, and then these other siblings who also want to be successful in different ways are just like now his family and having to etc. And what
was really weird about it is that all sounds like, you take that and you take, one of the great things about the show is that the brother is a gay and played by a bisexual, which I think is immoral, but whatever. You
can take that off in your bingo cards, Buffy fans. Fans.
Let gay men play gay characters, Joel. Greedy bisexuals trying to take our roles.
Young.
Anyway, so but that means that there's just like excessive amounts of queer content in it in a really positive, really good way. But it feels at the start of the show like it's going to be a lot of bitterness, a lot of like,
sniping,
trials and tribulations, or these are like horrible people maybe who are trying to like grasp their way up. And it turns out that the kicker of the first episode and the rest of the show is that they very deeply love their brother and they want to protect him and they care about him very much and they have a lovely relationship together, and it's kind of that kind of it's what Schitt's Creek became in terms of that like kindness comedy stuff.
Absolutely. So the couple of subversions being that it's kind of set up to be this really like cynical Hollywood blah 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 blah.
New York, not Hollywood.
But fame, etc.
And importantly New York, because it's a very SNL based TV show. The 2 writers are SNL writers, and Lorne Michaels is the producer, I think.
But the brother is actually very just kind and kind of dumb, but like very nice, and the mother is like presented to be like a stage mom, but she's actually just trying to make the best of it for her kids, which is, and I think the thing we're missing here, Ken Marino, which I'll get to, but the thing we're missing is that it's very, very funny.
Yes,
like genuinely we were like, this seems like okay, you might squeeze a laugh out of me for this, but
the laughs a minute quotient is really, really high,
and there's no like, they're not precious where they're like, this is the joke we've crafted and you have to laugh at it. They kind of just throw them out there
and they move on. It's very Arrested Development style in that way.
Anya Ken Marino plays the manager of, I think on the show he's called Chase Dreams. Who's the kid, the star. And Ken Marino, God has been in so many things. He was the hapless other detective in From Mars.
He's probably the second main character for Party Down.
Yeah, the chief, the manager in Party Down. He was on. He's like one of these faces.
He's in Happy Endings at one point.
Everything. Yeah,
he's in all those kind of, I'm gonna say post frat pack kind of things.
Yeah, and he just like will commit to humiliating himself in a role, which I really just live pathetic characters, which I really appreciate. And I thought the queer content, I think we're in just kind of this weird like post intentional era with queer content, where it's like you can neither really in some ways you can neither really satisfy by having it being incidental or really deliberate, because we've gone through both those areas. Like it has to just be integrated in a realistic way.
You say that, but I mean, like, look at Looking, which I'm not sure if we talked about on the podcast, but we revisited Looking extensively recently, and that's really aggressive. Very not aggressive. It's very it's text, subtext, and it's a very intentional queer representation. And while it is integrating it into everyday life very well and actually showing real life, I mean, like, yeah, you can't do post or after school specials about queerness anymore, but I think there's such a space for queer specific texts.
Oh, sure, if that's the headline of the text, but in this case, the point of the show is not about the brothers, like the brother. It's not about the brother specifically, or his sexuality or his life or anything like that. So I think when that isn't your headline, or if you have it in a Lovecraft Country or any kind of show that's kind of ostensibly other things, I think it's a weird one how to satisfy me in terms, or even like something like a Star Trek or whatever. Yeah. How do you integrate that? And yeah, I thought that there was no like easy answers or easy characterization for anyone in the other two, which whenever anything is grounded in that way makes the comedy that much just that much better. Do you know what I mean? And I think an absolute revelation, the last thing you ever expect is that the episodes that we have, the downloads we have for it, including an after show, which was each like literally was part of the viewing experience for us, because like I've never watched an after show where it's genuinely actually just laugh out loud funny,
except for Broad City, which was great.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, what a great show. Okay, Buffy Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, so speaking of tangled relationships and sexualities, we have in this episode of Buffy, which is called Triangle, is very much a palate cleanser, I would say, after last week's a
very refreshing dose of Espenson. Yeah,
exactly. Last week's heavy, gritty, realistic expose on drug abuse or whatever. But yeah, so we have Willow and Anya kind of sniping each other and getting into bickering. Giles goes away, really inexplicably compelled to travel to England to have a conversation, which it could be had over the phone.
Which Joyce is also like, why did they make you go over there if they didn't have any information?
And in their conflict, basically setting up a few interesting duos for the episode, really just for character moments and just for conversation. So we have Anya and Willow, obviously. We have Spike and Xander spend a reasonable amount of time like playing pool.
Most interesting to me, Buffy and Tara.
Buffy and Tara go back to college of all places for a bit.
And I think what would have to be the most fascinating and lovely and well-written moment of the episode, Buffy and Dawn. There's an interaction between Buffy and Dawn towards the beginning of the episode where Dawn is asking Buffy, why she is now taking the photos down of Riley from her bedroom, and kind of just discussing, Buffy says, yeah, everyone's all coming except for me, apparently. And Dawn's just kind of quite like kind and comforting to Buffy, and it's a very nice interaction. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an atypical approach, I think, to relationships and conversation with compared to kind of previous Buffy arcs, and I think it kind of characterizes the later show in terms of relationships more or less being a more stable concept rather than a single issue kind of thing. But yeah, the episode from a comedic point of view is structured around Buffy having a complete nervous breakdown in a hilarious fashion. Like the opening gag we have is, I think Buffy's dealing really well with Riley, and then it cuts to a convent and her saving a nun. I presume this is like a Sunnydale nunnery or whatever, saving a nun from a vampire, and then be like, so how's the whole not having sex with men thing going? Maybe I'll do that forever. What's the word she uses? Like
abjuring
from men. It's pretty funny. Actually, like, very quick note, there's very little written about this episode in terms of academic response, as you may have predicted. However, it just occurred to me while we were watching the episode, I was like, oh Christ, the body is coming up soon. And great, loved episode so much. B, I hate that episode, it's so upsetting. And C,
you better start reading now.
I better start reading now. There's so much written about the body, and it's so good. One of the articles essays are found called "Prophecy Girl and the Powers That Be" by Wendy Love Anderson from the book Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Philosophy, Fear and Trembling in Sunnydale, which actually my sister Eva gave to me. So thanks again, Eva. It just discusses generally Buffy and Co.'s attitude to religion, which is often very like post-religion, I think, and it's very like 90s disaffected, kind of aware of it, if
it's
push
quaint.
would probably say, oh well, yeah, of course I'm religious, but like have no integration into their lives. But they highlight this interaction where Buffy, like, asks if about sex, and she's like, do you have to be like super religious? So she does not seem to have any clear articulated vision of an ideal world beyond survival, security, and happiness. Even in her sixth season revelation that she was torn from heaven means only she was warm and loved, finished and complete. So yeah, it's a very good point in the sense that, like, I think the Buffy show's relationship with religion is generally non-existent, but while existent, it's very like dismissive. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think there's something we say for a show which characterizes supernaturality so extensively and just decides that the question whether there is a god is not relevant necessarily to the cosmology that they're even the presence or absence of a god is not relevant. It's just not part of what they're talking about. Yeah. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think the CH show is kind of like, you don't want to be, I don't think there's any need to be like dismissive or rude about religion in terms of the themes of the show, like from the writer's point of view. But I think a studied disinterest, exactly. Yeah, I think it's probably the right position for it here.
Anyway, that interaction between Xander and Anya is quite interesting at the start of the episode. I found it a little discomforting because you get the sense that the writers are of the opinion that Buffy should have seen this coming with Riley. And I don't know what there's a tension there for me, because it kind of feels like what's happening there is that they decided to write Mark Blucas out maybe episode 7 or so, or whenever he said, like, Buffy doesn't love me to Xander. That's probably when they started the machinations of writing him out. And with that, what you get is a trending towards a perspective which is useful from a television writing perspective, but not necessarily from a character point of view. Because Buffy, it's not in her nature to be uncaring of someone, and they never really properly portrayed that. They portrayed her as being distracted by her mother dying.
Yeah, by very legitimate distractions, essentially.
Yeah. And it's hard maybe it's just with the hindsight of this was never going to work. But it feels very hard to agree with what Anya and Xander are saying here. But I don't think it's brilliant writing machination. I think it's escape hatch for a character that they're trying to integrate well, and they're kind of doing a mushy job of it. Because what Xander and Anya say are things like, Anya says, maybe it won't happen to us because it's all about her messing things up.
Yeah, Xander says relationship debris is piling up on the Buffy highway.
Yeah, and like, this is 2 men down now.
2, oh my god.
Like, this is Xander who got caught by his ex-girlfriend kissing his gay best friend, who then fell through a staircase onto a pylon, and who never spoke to him properly after that, and who he was incredibly cruel towards after that, Which also, sidebar, but lends itself to one of my favourite jokes in early of Angel, where Angel says to Cordelia, it's like, you have any idea what it's like to be stabbed through the chest like that? She's like, yes, I do. But like Xander isn't some moral, it's not exactly like he's doing great in the relationship front, Xander does have more failed relationships, because he's got like Mantis Lady and Inca Mummy Girl and all that kind of stuff. 100%. And it's just very it's very odd, and I think it's organic. Almost no one, in my opinion, almost no one except Giles talks about anyone's relationship on this show where they're not actually just reflecting their own personalities. I think Willow does sometimes too. I think Willow can sometimes have that empathy and look outside of herself. Buffy has, unfortunately, no empathy in a sense. She has a lot of sympathy. She's a very caring person, but like in situations like this episode, she can only understand other people's situations through her own perspective or her own experiences. I think Buffy has a forgivable version of what a lot of people who either are fictional protagonists or leaders in that respect in real life, where you're right, main character syndrome, where she doesn't have empathy insofar as she can't really put herself in other people's shoes, but she can leverage her own kind of solipsism to a certain degree to be helpful. It's like a kind of like a
an emotional like Dexter thing where it's like, you can use it for good.
Yeah, it's basically the opposite of that kind of like Keatsian negative. So John Keats is a 19th century poet, ode to Greek urn and ode to a nightingale and La Belle Dame sans Merci and stuff like this. He's actually one of my favorite.
All the big odes.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite poets. Actually, I wrote about him for the Leaving Cert, and I got a lot of points for it. So, negative capability. It's like the ability to kind of like put yourself in a state of like uncertainty and take on the emotions of other people and stuff like this for the sake of artistic perspective, where you let go of the self. Is why understanding of negative capability, but Buffy has the opposite of it at all times. Anyway, yeah, the comedy is quite good though. When Tara is telling Buffy, she's like, yeah, like Willow and Anya had a bit of a tiff, and Xander left, and I'm not sure why I said Xander. Xander left, and Buffy's like, Xander left Anya,
but they have a miraculous love. It's actually, I make a note about this. I think it's the most unbalanced SMG acts as Buffy so far, where she's not under some kind of influence or a spell or something like that. It's actually just her having a big weep about it.
It's really good. I really like it.
And consistently, like, once again, such an ugly crier, like an intentional thing that she does, which is quite fun. And that's where she, and we kind of have this whole arc which we're kind of gliding over, which is that they summon the troll Olaf, who for really no plot reason is a troll a crystal that happens to have come to Anya.
No, you're wrong. It's something to do with the crystal.
Yeah, no, he's trapped within the crystal.
Is it specifically the crystal?
Yeah, it's
Are we sure about that now?
They talk about it a lot in the episode. They say that some witches trapped him in a crystal. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think there's like very good thematic reasons in the sense that, like, what's happened here is that Anya has Anya, of course, because all characters have to reflect Buffy's emotional journey, she is summoning forth an ex-boyfriend from the distant past who she has unfinished business with, and which caused her to go on her vengeance path, and having to deal with that while, like, dealing with friend interactions. It's very much what's happening to Buffy.
A cheating boyfriend as well.
A cheating boyfriend, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Willow says stuff like, just before he comes out of the crystal, it says, "Come on and let it out." So it's very much Willow inviting Anya to impose her kind of like, her subconscious stuff onto the situation.
What do you think of the whole Willow Anya dynamic in this episode?
It's a little contrived. I think it's not quite there in the episodes coming up to this. There's a little bit of it, but not a huge amount. Tons of fun though. I mean, like, when you actually get them together and they're fighting someone and they just immediately like group up together and like try to protect each other like that, their bickering is two genuine powerhouses in the two of them, in the sense that I think they're both deliver some of the most emotional content of the show. Like, Anya in the body is one, I would say, the emotional nadir of the show, and Willow at various points crying at any point, is very sad. But I think they have incredible comedic chops, and when they're riffing off each other, it's a lot of fun. It's very natural, and it's very accomplished. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think one of my takeaways from Willow on this watch of Buffy has been that Willow's a lot meaner in a good way than I remember. Just like there's a consistent thread of like hostility to her, which I kind of have some respect for. But no, they work very well together. And I do like the development of the idea of like, Anya, why are you still not getting the human behaviors? And she's like, no, I get them now, I just don't like them. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to subscribe to them. Yeah, I
wonder what happened to me. Anyway, it's a definitely good dynamic. I liked when they're driving and stuff, and they're trying to work together, and like, I mean, in some ways they're the same character but different perspectives on it, in the sense that they're both socially outcasted. Willow is trying to kind of like obtain some kind of acceptance or some kind of finding ways to fit herself into the situations, and Anya's rejected it. So so the title of the episode, I think there's only one level on it. Can you think of anything besides the kind of like love triangle that's going on there between Willow, Anya and Xander?
Is there any mystical significance to triangles we're not privy to?
So I was actually thinking about this. I was like, not mystical, but like a triangle is like,
Pointy.
Well, it's pointy, but it's often considered to be the strongest architectural shape in the sense that it's very load bearing. So I don't know, maybe something about that.
Load bearing as the performing platform was in the bronze, which has now been demolished.
That was hilarious.
So I don't think they certainly haven't focused on it before, but obviously traditionally you see the band performing on the stage, and occasionally our characters would be in the rafters having conversations.
That's where Buffy would have seen Willow walking out of the bronze with the vampire in the very first episode.
Yeah, exactly. But in this iteration of the bronze, they had a central platform, almost like a cage match, and they had the band performing on top of it, and then they had Olaf the troll come in and systematically knock out the 4 pillars and just like paralyze a load of people probably. Yeah. And you feel that it's precipitating a remodel of the bronze.
Yeah, no, the bronze doesn't look the same in the next episode as far as I remember, or like on an ongoing basis. Yeah, I think the bronze gets like basically a facelift after this.
We also see in that bronze seeing a pairing of Xander and Spike having kind of like snooker or pool or whatever, and bro-ish interactions. And there's an aspect of trying to portray the Spike stuff as like a foible, or like it's like comedic or embarrassing how he's trying to like ingratiate himself to Buffy, but like I'm still getting a lot of disturbing vibes off of it. Like even him like practicing his speech with a mannequin he's made of Buffy and then beating the hell out of a box of chocolates. Like, yeah, I'm not sure I'm getting the comedy off it as intended.
Yeah, I think part of that is definitely like time difference, or like the difference of a different era of like comedy and perspectives on violence towards women and violence about women. Even
just like the level of maybe indirect comedy you can take off something, like even when that kind of, which is not unique to Buffy, but that kind of Viking-esque joke about where Olaf's like, I'll have merry ways with your more attractive daughters, etc. It's like I don't even get a glance of a funny old-timey joke off of this. It's just kind of like, I don't like it. But I do think what I think is interesting with the Spike stuff is if you're generous to it, it's an interesting portrayal of how a soulless vampire is trying to understand and replicate something, but it's inherently tainted.
Yeah. I think there's 2 things there. One is that I think it was just a different time in the sense that it's just hard to write a character now who you're supposed to feel sympathetically towards and who you're supposed to think is a bit of a heartthrob, because that is what they're trying to write with Spike here. They're trying to get people on his side. They are aware that he has all
Byron-esque kind of thing.
Sorry?
Byron-esque kind of.
Yeah, maybe. I think more so they're aware that he has a large following on the forums, and viewers at home very into him. I think a lot of young girls were super Spike fans. I know my friend Jenny was like, found Spike very alluring when she was younger. But what's happened here is that it's hard in 2020 to look at someone saying Buffy, why won't you accept me, and beating up like a replication of her, and then trying to set it up again so he can do it again, and then later on being like oh, I'm trying to help you out, but I'm also going to suck some blood. Look at me, I'm so great for not sucking blood.
Yeah.
It's too incel-y. For the 21st century, and well, for 2020, and as a writing tone. And it's part of the reason I don't like Spike. I think there is a lot of giving him a pass on gross behavior because of the bizarre elements of being a vampire. But yeah, go on.
Just giving him a pass on so much. Like if you really just tot up any one of his individual actions, if the writing wanted to take a turn against a character, would be like him banished from the house, and it's like, oh, Spike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other thing is I think he's supposed to parallel Anya's growth in this episode. Not growth within... I don't think she specifically grows in this episode.
I don't think she grows at all.
But I mean more so...
Her progression.
Yeah. So she is trying to recover from being a demon, trying to find ways to feel human and to find her own path through humanness, with a soul and with all that entails, and kind of the Spike perspective is like, how does he recover? How does he grow without that, while with only restriction, i.e. the chip? Because as we see, like, while he's ridiculous and he's doing it for the reason that he wants to have sex with Buffy, he is, like, restraining himself from like sucking on people during this accident, and trying to make a woman who potentially is dead more comfortable. But it's an odd parallel anyway.
There is that bit where he tries to comfort the woman who's been crushed in the fall, puts something under her head, and then just as the camera cooks away, when Buffy's like, I'm not impressed by this, I'm pretty certain he pulls the pillow away from her head again, which is like quite dark.
Not great.
It's one of these episodes that really vacillates based on the narrative requirement for how people get hurt or not, because like a lot of throwing stuff around and that's funny and everything's made of styrofoam, and then the platform collapses and some people are seriously injured, and then in the magic box a lot of Olaf with his giant skull crushing hammer just like lightly,
which they use later in season 2,
damaged glory
like
a lot of people getting thrown around by that, but in kind of like a comedic pratfall kind of way, and then like a really sudden and vicious moment where he just breaks Xander's wrist, which I didn't like at all.
It's very weird. There's like basically Xander's fighting, that's fine, he climbs up onto the staircase after he's been knocked a few times, and the second he falls down from that, where he gets turned in, his mouth is suddenly like full of blood and his face is all covered in cuts, and it's like moment to moment there's like nothing specifically happened there to you except that you got thrown off a troll and now you are covered in blood.
Yeah, his blood pack burst in his mouth.
Exactly. Yes, it was a weird one. And then maybe the best comedic moment of the episode is Buffy beating up Olaf, saying stuff like, "Their love will last forever," which I think is very beautiful. We've criticized this episode a good amount. I really like it. I got a lot
of fun with it. Yeah, sorry.
I think it's one of it hits the perfect Buffy balance for episodes that aren't powerhouses. If an episode isn't going to be a powerhouse, it should be this, where it's comedic, stupid, fun, developing character relationships, furthering the main story in small ways, and deepening the characterization of the different people. It was very well balanced as an episode.
Yeah,
it's genuinely funny.
It was fun. It was funny, and it was just so necessary to have that. And let you sit with the characters.
It's a real circuit breaker after the last couple of episodes.
I really appreciate just throughout how everyone was integrated. Like, it was a good ensemble episode, and Tara.
Unfortunately, without Giles, would have been great if Giles had some integration here. Though I think it's too similar to the doppelganger. No, what's it called? The one where he gets turned into a demon.
The Man Inside Me.
That's the Tobias Funke book. Okay.
It's something like that.
Yeah. Anyway,
Gemini Man, something like that.
Wow.
I like how well integrated Tara is in this, because I think the plot line about her maybe not fitting in is a fine plot line, but then you need to show if we're claiming, like, say Riley never actually fit in with the gang. Everyone just said he did, but she actually does play with everyone quite well. Yeah,
I agree. Last note before we kind of move on to the dusting, there's some queer content. We do like that shit. And Willow does specifically say, I'm not interested in Xander, gay now. So I mean, I don't know why this doesn't come out into conversations more regularly. I remember a couple of very chiding articles being published in the last 10 years or so, being like, why are you all ignoring Willow's bisexuality, essentially? Yeah,
and I think we've had this exact same conversation about Willow before. And if you take a step back from it now, if we say a narrative, right? Or not a narrative, but a sequence of events where someone who hasn't understood their sexuality has a meaningful relationship with, in this, if you're a woman in this case, with a man, and then comes to understand that they're gay, comes out, has a great relationship with a woman, and then is understands they're gay going forward. There's nothing complicated about that.
No.
But there's something about Willow which I think does provoke us to obscure that. And
I think it's the strength of the relationship with Oz and people's affection for that relationship.
Yeah, but I suppose that part of the understanding there is you can't have a really genuine relationship with someone and then later realise that it wasn't inherently a sexual thing for you or whatever. But also, I appreciate this as well, is that because she is such a strong queer character, like if there's an angle where she can also be by representation, I can understand wanting to have that, but that might not be what she represents.
I don't think it is. I think this episode kind of quite clearly makes a text.
Another one for you, okay.
Where what she says is like, and at the same time I find it a little troublesome because I really hate that note of, oh, you're not a threat if you're gay. You know, you can't threaten to take away my man, and therefore it's this kind of like desexing and disregarding of people on the basis of their sexuality and minimizing them. Yeah,
personally, I find a lot of gay people very threatening, so it's a myth. I'm like, I can see you working.
I like, you know, like the comebacks keep popping up. It's like, and I'm like, nope, too vicious for a podcast. And it's like, nope,
you can't
2
say
times too vicious
name.
for a podcast. Anyway, so so it's a funny moment. I don't love it as an episode or as a note. For 2001, I don't really give a shit. But like, you know, if you're in 2020 and you're writing, you know, oh, don't worry, I'm not a threat to your boyfriend because I'm gay. It's like, I'm not a threat to your boyfriend. Like Xander can have friends who are women who are straight.
Yeah.
And you know, if that's not possible, like maybe you should, you know, have a better relationship.
Dusting.
Okay, so Buffy Bits. We get a couple of nice songs in the bronze. We have
real songs.
Bohemian Like You by the Dandy Warhols. And you have a Blur song that I don't know particularly well, so I have to look it up. Because I'm actually not a huge Blur fan, but There's No Other Way is what it's called. Okay. So Olaf is played by Abraham Ben-Ruby, who was in Eeyore for a long time. He was in Eeyore from 1994 to 2009, and I would have known him really well because he plays the desk clerk Jerry. He is he's in not almost every episode. He's in loads and loads of episodes because he's like basically this, not the secretary, but yeah, the desk clerk. And I was just like, oh, I can't believe that's him. That's cool. He also comes back in Selfless in season 7, which is
in human form.
Yes, yeah. It's the episode where Anya has her. Oh, is it the episode where Anya? Like, is it the great episode about Anya? I think it might be.
Potentially, yeah.
The one where she's kind of like gone back to her demon ways. Anyway, this episode comes at the same time as Ted, Gingerbread, and the Iron Team. Mark Field highlights this episode as being kind of like a similar structure to those episodes where they kind of reflect the finale and the problem they're in, but suggests the wrong solution to it. I think that's most of it. That's most of my Buffy bits. Do you have any, Joe?
Xander has very noticeably hairy nipples in the opening scene.
Oh, great.
Which is odd for you don't see that a lot on television. He actually just has a hairy chest and hairy nipples, which I appreciate. There's an odd note of him missing Riley. Like the whole opening scene is him like, it's so weird that Riley isn't here. I meant to give him my crescent screwdriver or whatever.
Yeah, you know what it reminded me of?
Wrench, rather.
It reminded me of when I was like a bit 19 and my dog died or was put down. And for ages, I kept like going to the back door to see if she was going to be there, and I'm being like, you know, feeling the like misstep of like, you know, oh no, gone now. And I was like, yeah, the way they were phrasing that is that kind of thing. It's like, you know, oh, you need to give him back that crescent wrench. It's like, shut up, Xander.
Yeah,
shut the fuck up.
Absolutely like that. I also learned over the course of this episode, I was like, what is a nunnery? Because I was like, is Buffy a convent or a nunnery? So. A monastery or a nunnery is somewhere where monks or nuns live. Convents specifically have to have people from religious orders who are mendicants, and mendicants are people who like give up things and are abstinent and impoverished and all that kind of stuff. So it's only a convent if they're kind of in deliberate deprivation, etc. And there's also an abbey and a priory, and it's only called that if it's headed by an abbot or prior. A prior, I think, yeah. Prior, yeah, absolutely. So weird. all these generic religious place words we use actually have specific connotations to them. I also thought the nun in the episode was like wildly gorgeous, like it's like a walk on from an ANTM for no specific reason. Perfectly
bleached hair and all that stuff. Bizarre.
And I also a couple more things, but lore wise, Giles mentions that the Watchers Council has a central library, which is like a fantastically useful resource, which is never really used by Slayer's show. Yeah. And the precipitating incident is Willow trying to devise a spell for artificial sunlight that Buffy could lob like a grenade into a vampire den. Also an incredibly useful idea, which never manifests again. But like that's the kind of shit where I'm like, that's where my brain goes. Like how can I weaponize sunlight? And a character note for Spike, which I liked weirdly, was that he really likes blooming onions.
I don't know what those are.
I knew you were going to say this to me. I've sent this to you before. It's basically like a giant onion that you chop, but it kind of, it opens out like a flower, so it's still cohesive.
Did you deep fry it or something?
You deep fry it basically. So it's a deep fried giant onion.
Why?
And people eat it.
It's the most American thing I've ever heard.
We're onion
Actually, no, that's not fair. If you put loads of bacon bits on it, it'll be the most American thing I've ever heard.
I think you can obviously do that as well, or cheese or whatever. Yeah.
So the other thing we forgot to mention is that Dawn at the end of the episode does find out that she's the key, which is going to be precipitating.
Dawn at the end of the episode finds out that there's something about Dawn. I don't think she I was really trying to catch it, and I don't know if she specifically heard that she was the key, just that she was a thing of interest.
Okay. I think she does in the next episode. Isn't that what the next episode is about? Is her...
Potentially, and I think that's fully plausible. It's just, I think the part of the conversation where they're talking about how Dawn is the key is just before she actually walks in, and then they're like, what would they do to Dawn if they found out? And that's kind of the bit she hears.
Getcha. Okay, no, the next episode is actually the Scooby gang dealing with the Watchers Council, which is exciting. And I'm trying to see here about Dawn stuff. Yeah, there's not that much about Dawn's stuff in the episode, apparently.
Guarantee she'll be lurking around the magic box, leaning on things like Angela Chase. Yeah,
of course. The next episode is going to be called Checkpoint. We actually forgot. We used to do that. We used to say that next week for the episode, which is X. I don't think we do that anymore, but I like that. So next episode is Checkpoint. Do you have any fashion notes, Joe?
Yeah, loads of fashion in this episode. Buffy off screen tries on the nun's wimple.
And while she's fighting for the nun, she is wearing a pink satin blouse. It's disgusting. Yeah,
pink satin blouse. Anya has a separate hot pink number on top later in the episode.
Willow is wearing a gold choker at one point, which I did not like.
Tara has her eyelids. I'd say I don't have the makeup language to describe this, but her eyes are made up in a very dark blue, which is just eyeshadow. Yeah, but it's just not a
flattering
contrast that I like. That kind of garage door kind of look.
It is kind of garage story.
But I always feel completely like trite when I'm like, I don't like it when women wear this. It's like, I don't mean it like that. I mean like we're criticizing everyone's fashion here, but like I couldn't, if I put it on, it would look like a scary clown. So
it's funny because like makeup for 2001 versus 2020 is like such a different game, because like everyone has access to constant tutorials, constant reviews of different makeup stuff, and there's so much artistry in it these days. Whereas at the time, for makeup to be an artistry kind of thing, you went to a makeup artist. Otherwise you were like blush, foundation, stuff.
One of the jokes in the other two is they go to an industry event, and there's one of the characters goes home with a woman who appears to be a 40-year-old woman, but is actually an 11-year-old who does amazing makeup tutorials.
Yeah, incredible.
And it's a high concept thing, which I really enjoy.
The other two being the show that we were talking about earlier, because it sounded like it didn't sound like a capital letters there when you said
the other two, the HBO show.
It's not HBO. It's
not HBO. I thought you said it was HBO.
It's Comedy Central, and it's moved to HBO. Okay. Dawn is wearing at one point a top that says "Glamour is my occupation."
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
And I was like, is that supposed to be a note about her existence? Like the other word of glamour being a
magical illusion, or like a light magical deception, essentially.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go.
I was thinking about Dawn. I'll just very briefly mention this. It's impressive they've but they've constructed this whole plotline about her being a mystical key with one piece of like CGI in that episode where she phases it. They haven't really had to do anything else, which is like, that's good storytelling, and not just being like, she's going fucking glow all the time.
Quite like the CGI in this episode where Willow and Anya were doing ended up getting Olaf through. It was just a nice little like circly thing. Anyway, okay, and death count.
A single death, a roguey looking vampire who gets staked in the nunnery at the start of the episode. Not a death-filled episode.
Sure isn't. And what is your rating there, Joel?
I would give this episode 8.0 Chekhov's troll hammers.
Do you tell me about that?
I wouldn't say I had any excitement for this episode going into it. I'm not particularly familiar with it, but I thought it was a great ensemble piece. As we like to say, everyone was in their voice, and I think it moved everyone's relationships of stuff forward. And I thought it approached some relationship stuff and some interpersonal stuff in a way that Buffy hasn't done before, and that freshness is appreciated.
Yeah,
I just look fun watching it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 8.3 insane troll logics out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like this episode. I think it's light, it's fluffy, fun, moves the dial forward, and it is that kind of thing that I really like about season 5. Lots of magic box stuff, lots of shenanigans, lots of like post-teen drama. Yeah, that's my jam.
Next week's episode is going to be interesting because it's the basis for like a lot of expanded
your brain
Buffy lore.
Yeah, true. Okay, and let us do the Cordelia chase.
Cordelia chase. I won't do that. I won't do that again. So this episode of Angel is Redefinition, which is a kind of a loose but kind of direct sequel to last week's episode, with Angel going a bit darker and letting everyone get at Wolf and Hurt. And
I quite liked it.
It's enjoyable. It's very much about pursuing. So if we were to put a name to it, what the arc they're trying to do at the moment is that it is neither Angel, who has his rules and his arc role for redemption, or the gleefully soulless and jealous. It's something which I would characterize as Dark Angel, which is like a thing that often happens where, you know, you put your character into like a stripped back Punisher type space, but you still have certain things they won't do. Like, he's not going to kill Cordelia. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's the only part I didn't like about the episode was when Darla and Drusilla, basically what happens is that they, like, Angel finds them, or they find Angel, I can't remember which way around it was. No, Angel finds them and is waiting for them, and he's put a bunch of gasoline on the ground and throws his cigarette
really
into the
jumped
floor,
to the end of the episode here,
and burns them.
Yeah. And
Darla's like, who was that? It wasn't Angel, it wasn't Angelus, it was a third person. I was like, shut the fuck up. Like, you know, people do bad things sometimes.
She's like, who was that? Yeah. Who is this?
And they're covered in like bad burn makeup.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the only part of it. Like, everything else I thought was actually really strong.
Yeah, so the whole episode is basically, bizarrely, you see him training, you see him getting leaner, you see him getting his weapons all sharp and stuff. So it's meant to be like a cool guy episode. It's all narration about how he has to, like, you know, he's Christian Bale in Batman Begins. He needs to hone his craft and all that kind of stuff.
Is he more like Christian Bale in American Psycho?
Yeah. But he actually doesn't speak in the whole episode, which I didn't realise. He just does voiceover. Even though, and like, that would be kind of egregious enough. The several scenes he's in with other people, he just doesn't talk. Yeah. But that's, you know, it's pulp, but it's enjoyable. And then there's a building arc of Darla and Drusilla trying to build up a demon kind of lackeys for taking over the city, and you do get threat from them, and you do get the sense that they actually are significant threats in the way that you know, that they're worth being scared about, which I think is very useful. And then on the Wolf from Herc side, you have that Lila and Lindsay have survived the massacre and basically putting them in a position where they think they're going to get killed, etc. But actually they're put as co-heads of the unit, the Special Project Angel unit, for the time being, which I think is good because, again, it gives them a clear point and a reason, a position, all that kind of stuff. But what I thought was funny is with Lindsay, it's like when they're debriefing them, it's like, Lindsay, you've done this and this and been shit in these ways. And Lila, what other episodes you were in? This very specific callback to the telekinetic girl you let go. These things are equal. So, you know, it's just kind of like, we've tried out a number of different lawyers and we're going to keep you. But like, what was the thing you did? You know, like, as from a production point of view. And then the entirety of the gang is they go to the karaoke bar. Get really drunk. They sing, I think it's We Are the Champions. They say a lot of, I feel like, skirting on problematic things about each other. There's a lot about like calling, like,
Cordelia uses the or word that we don't use about people with mental health problems. Well, no, sorry, not mental health problems. It's totally inaccurate. Intellectual disabilities. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So which is used very casually in this era of television, is what I'm finding. But yeah, she uses a slur that's used against people with intellectual disabilities. Gunn calls Wesley like pansy in this way that is really kind of like homophobic adjacent, and then I feel like Wesley also says some stuff to Gunn which is like skirting on calling him urban and stuff like this. It's all very kind of like early noughties in a way that was like bizarre. But then they go off and they get a vision of a demon and manage to beat the demon by themselves. And again, this was this demon was hulking. I was like, this is also in a certain episode, this would be the episode where someone's spine is crushed. You know, there's like this like a flexible relationship with damage on the show, you know, but they come back to Angel and say we're going to keep the agency going because it's the right thing to do, etc. So it's all kind of like it's very clear what's happening in the episode, which is always a bonus for Angel. You have to like Angel being broody and playing with swords,
which I do,
if you've come to watch Angel the show, I think. And and the shot where he is in the garage and shot very much in darkness after having killed all the minions that they've gathered, and then he burns them. While the actual note it ends on is a bit trite, it is sufficiently like memorable, I think.
Oh, it's so cool. I remember TV3, which is one of the 4 Irish TV channels. Back in the day, used to, when they had an Angel ad on, what the song was always, it was not R. Kelly. I can't remember who sings it, but you know, I am a mountain, I am a tall tree. Oh, I am the world's greatest. Sorry, I only know it because what should we call him? Bonnie Prince Billy did a cover. No, I knew the song well before that. The version I know best is the Bonnie Prince Billy cover, which is actually really good. But that was a song for it, and it was the really iconic moment from that trailer or that ad was Angel throwing that cigarette into the gasoline and exploding. Yeah,
and bizarrely, one of the continuity notes with this episode was it's only one of 2 times like Drusilla says the name Darla in the whole of the Buffyverse, because she's always like my voluminous flumshing or whatever, you know, and like Mag in saying stuff. Yeah,
realistically, they only appear in like 3 or 4 episodes together.
I think they have a reasonable amount of, you know, any of the Angel flashback stuff for the Whirlwind, like she's usually there. Yeah,
that's true. Who the fuck sat there and like went through all the scripts and was like, oh, here's another instance where she calls her Dara. Oh my god, there's only 2. It's like, get a life. It goes so much deeper than that stuff. Like I told you that I found a very well regarded website recently about Doctor Who. It's a website which is actually used as a primary resource on the BBC website, but it's entirely fan made. And someone's gone through every Doctor Who book ever published, of which there are thousands, and listed every page where there's a reference to a previous thing that happened on television. And we're talking like for a given book, some throwaway book of nonsense, it might be 100 references. Like, oh, when they said this, that was a reference to this. So like people have infinite amount of time to do this kind of stuff. It's what I found. Overall, like an enjoyable episode. If you like Angel, there's a lot there to like in this episode. Sure. So I'd probably give this 7 failed feminist gestures. I was going to go for 8 failed feminist gestures. I think it was only like 1 step down from the previous episode.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Okay, should we wrap up there then, Joel?
Absolutely. So that's all for us for this week. Next week we're going to be listening to...
I've already forgotten what it's called, I'm sorry.
It's very important, Brian, that we let them know.
It is
Checkpoint. The Watchers Council episode. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you've thrown me off because you threw me off last time. If you enjoyed this episode,
what did I do?
You did. You made a whole fucking meal of this part of it.
Oh, sorry. You gave out to me for something, and then you said, why don't you do it? And I did. I did a better version than you do.
If you enjoyed this episode, tell your friends, tell your trolls, and if you have any suggestions for horror films, because Halloween is obviously coming up and we're going to watch some horror films, and we have unfortunately watched all of them that we're aware of. If you have any suggestions for a good horror film we haven't seen, absolutely hit us up with that. I'd appreciate that.
If you've been listening carefully, you've probably mentioned all the horror films we've seen on this podcast. Some of the ones we've been considering, I think we'll probably go back to this is going to be the last episode before Halloween, actually. Yeah, it is. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy Halloween. Ooh. Spooky.
It's going to be very weird Halloween this year. We were thinking of Silence of the Lambs just to revisit a classic. You know, is it a thriller movie? Is it a horror? Who knows?
I get a panic attack watching this. Let's call it a horror.
Yeah. I think Jennifer's Body, potentially, because I've never seen it and you think you have.
I think I have, but I don't remember enough about it.
Yeah, sure.
And then my other suggestion was, or my suggestion for that in addition, was the Nightmare on Elm Street: A New Nightmare, because Freddy comes out of the film into the real world and harasses the actors, and it's actually an originator of a lot of those concepts. And it's one of the only Nightmare on Elm Street films additionally written by Wes Craven, who originated it. So
see, but I'm not sure if I like Nightmare on Elm Street at all, to be honest. But yes,
you specifically said no questions asked, no argument that I could pick a film. This is my pick.
Yeah, that's fine. I can still say I don't like Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, that's enough of that shit for now.
Okay, stay safe, stay well, stay spooky. I want to see you next time on Buffy Boys.
Okay.
See ya.
Yeah, there's not going to be another episode of Buffy Boys. Goodbye. It's the last one.